Whenever I tell students I'm going to talk about memory, I know by the reactions on their faces that they're preparing themselves to be bored out of their mind. But I always like to say that memory isn't what you think it is. First, we look at memory as being one of the most concrete and dependable parts of our psychology. The truth is that our memory is actually one of the most fragile and least dependable. This isn't just true of people suffering from things like Alzheimer's, but to all of us, regardless of age or even health. The other thing that's interesting about memory is that if you're a college student, you probably really want to pay attention, because even though you may think that you don't have problems with your memory, just think for a second on just how much you're depending upon your memory. When you cram for a test, when you're trying to remember what was said in a lecture, you're using your memory. So I hope for these reasons, all of you will appreciate the subject of today's video, which is an overview of the topic of memory. Now, keep in mind that this is an overview video. If you'd like to explore some of the topics I'm going to be briefly mentioning in this video, check out the other videos I have that explore topics like the AS model and others in greater detail. The links for those videos can be found below. When we talk about memory, think about how your memory works as being very similar to how a computer works. You have to enter the information into the computer first. Like when you're working on writing a paper, you open a Word document and type out the paper onto it. This is similar to us noticing stuff around us. When something is really interesting, useful, or just presented to us repeatedly, we remember it. We end up storing that information, just like how you may save a paper to your computer. The whole point of this is so that when you need that memory or you need that paper, you're able to retrieve it. This concept of how our memory works is integral to something called the AS model of memory. This model is composed largely of 3 processes and 3 stages. Essentially, we're exposed to sensory stimuli, the sights and sounds of everyday life. This forms the basis of our sensory memory. Anything we pay attention to and notice gets encoded into the second stage, which is our short-term memory. These are the things that we're actively noticing and paying attention to. If something is particularly interesting, shocking, emotional, or we're just repeatedly exposed to it, it gets stored in the third stage, which is long-term memory. From there, it remains until we have a need to use the information, in which case it is retrieved from our long-term memory back into short-term memory. When this happens, we often refer to it as being working memory. However, it's basically the same stage as short-term memory. There are many ways in which we can more easily remember information and store it in our long-term memory. And there are also many different types of long-term memory. All of this is explained in greater detail in my video on the AS model of memory. What's important to remember is that the AS model of memory doesn't necessarily correspond to specific parts of a person's brain. It's more of a way for us to understand complicated interactions that occur within our brains that help us form and remember memories. That being said, there are some specific structures of the brain that are especially associated with certain types of memory or with certain functions of our memory system. The 4 in particular that are important to know are the prefrontal cortex, the cerebellum, the hippocampus, and the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for higher order executive functioning. So basically, the part of the human brain that's the most human. It plays a critical role in semantic memory, or the meaning attached to words and beliefs. The cerebellum plays a critical role in procedural memories. These are also sometimes called muscle memories. It's the part of our memory that helps us do things that are automatic and don't involve a lot of conscious thought. The 2 most important structures of our brains involved with memory are the amygdala and the hippocampus. Think of these 2 as best friends. They're always at each other's side because they are literally located right next to one another. The amygdala plays a role in helping to regulate emotions, particularly very strong emotions like fear, anger, and aggression. Because it is so close to the hippocampus, when it gets activated, it activates the hippocampus too. This is important because the hippocampus plays a key role in recognition memory as well as episodic memory. Episodic memory is like a person's autobiographical memories or the memories of events that they have actually experienced. Because of this interaction between the amygdala and the hippocampus, we naturally have a tendency to remember events that are more emotional, traumatic, or dangerous over other types of memories. This is called the arousal theory. Basically, the more aroused your brain is, and by this I mean activated by stress, fear, or emotions, the more likely you are to remember that event causing these emotions. One example of this in action is something called flashbulb memory. A flashbulb memory is a particularly vivid memory of a very traumatic event. I'm sure what I'm about to say is going to date myself a little bit, but a great example I can think of is memories I have of September 11th. I wasn't anywhere near New York City or the Pentagon during the September 11th attacks, but I was at work and remember watching what happened step by step on the television. I can still tell you how I remember the events of that day play out because it was so emotional and scary. For me, that's flashbulb memory. They can be from events that are large, like a person's memory of the September 11th attacks, or very individual, like a person having a flashbulb memory of being the victim of a violent crime. What's really interesting, though, is that there's a difference between a memory being particularly vivid versus it being accurate. Flashbulb memories are generally very vivid. We remember a lot of details. However, they tend to be just as inaccurate as any other type of memory we make. This goes back to something I mentioned at the start of this video. Although we look at our memories as being concrete and inflexible, they're actually very fragile. Part of the reason behind this is that we have a tendency to just remember the overall gist of an event rather than fine details. I mean, think about it for a second. In order to remember details of events, you have to be paying really close attention. Do you think the average person is paying that close attention all the time? How about you? Do you have a problem with paying attention? Of course you do. We all do. And it helps explain why our memories can be less than accurate. The problem with our memories is that we often don't recognize this and unintentionally kind of fill in the gaps of our understanding. This isn't usually done intentionally, though, so don't think of it as lying. When we make memories, we do this. And when we recall those memories, we do it again. This, coupled with the mountain of information we're exposed to that can interfere with our clear recollection of things, all helps to explain why our memories can often be inaccurate. However, there are definitely things you can do to help improve this and encourage good habits that boost your memory. If you'd like to know more about memory errors or how to learn about ways to improve your memory, you can check out the additional videos I've done on those subjects, and the links for those videos can be found below. Also, if you're enjoying content like this, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give me a like with the thumbs up icon below. This helps me to continue to expand these videos and provide amazing content to all my viewers. Thanks for watching, everybody.